Hello, I'm John Gordon, and we're on the air with Project Blueberry. International spies and espionage, that's something we suburbanites living here in Wilbraham don't get to see very often. You may recall the Rosenberg case, when the Rosenbergs were found guilty of allegedly passing on secret documents to the Soviets in the early 1950s. For this, they were executed. Project Blueberry has recently learned that Robert and Mike Meeropol, sons of the Rosenbergs, were living in the Springfield area. So Project Blueberry took this opportunity to talk to the Meeropols about their parents and the Freedom of Information Act. Meet the Meeropols.
This is Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And this is Michael and Robert Meeropol. The four of them led a happy life until 1950, when the Rosenbergs were accused and convicted of the crime of the century, selling the secret of the atomic bomb to the Russians. Nowadays, Mike and Rob have been trying to get all of the files relating to their parents' case from the government. We asked them when they started to go after the files.
The Freedom of Information Act was passed in the 1960s. But then in the wake of Watergate, it was strengthened. And President Ford, who was president at the time, vetoed the strengthened act. And the day that it went into effect is the day that we filed suit.
Mike and Rob did ask for some information, and they received some.
And the thing that I want to stress about all this new material is it's material that they've chosen to release. It's material that's been culled from a much larger segment of material, so that it is in a way very much like what we had several years ago with Watergate, when Nixon agreed to release edited tape transcripts. In other words, he would get the tapes, he would look over them, he would decide what to release, and then release them to the press. It's the same type of thing. It's inadequate. It's not real freedom of information.
What is the Freedom of Information Act?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a detail that I should add. The Act basically states that any document, any government material that is over 15 years old can be released to qualified parties and interested individuals, as a member of the press, your own file. For us, in this particular case, being the children of our parents.
Why do you think the FBI has been avoiding giving you the information, giving you access to the files you want?
Well, there are a number of factors involved. One is they are aware. I mean, see, I don't think necessarily the FBI, and I don't even know who you mean by the FBI, because, you know, the head of the FBI is someone who wasn't even in the FBI when all this took place, and then there's this massive bureaucracy, people moving around, you don't quite know where they were then, how long they've been in service. But I don't think that the FBI as a hierarchy necessarily thinks that they frame my parents. They may think, there may be people in there who say, you know, we did technically frame these people. But I think that it doesn't work that way. But the FBI is quite aware of the illegal activities they've been engaged in. And they're aware of how much the public knows about this and how much they've been exposed. And they're aware that this type of procedure, this sort of Watergate-esque type procedure, is not a fluke. It's not an accident. It's standard law enforcement procedure. And that sort of reiteration and bringing out again in the open of more illegal activities and more dirty tricks and the like is something they really want to avoid. They rely, 95% of the arrests they make come from outside tips. Very little of their own detective work is involved. Whenever they don't get outside information, they tend to fail in their investigations. And they need public acceptance of them. Now, so I think they don't want to release stuff because it's going to make them look bad. Now, we feel that it will expose a frame-up.
Rob went on to explain the FBI, believing someone is guilty of something, goes out and makes up some evidence to convict them. and justifies themselves because they know these people are guilty. He then went on to make a good analogy.
Take Kojak. Every week, you see Kojak doing illegal things to criminals. Every single amendment of the Constitution, all the Bill of Rights, just right out the window with these guys. But why do you accept it? Why do you root for Kojak? Because in the first show of the television, the first scene of the television show, the criminal is shown to be guilty. You see the person committing the crime. And therefore, all these illegal acts by Kojak are justified because he's catching a criminal. Well, in the same manner, if the FBI makes an assumption, given the climate of the times, that communists are guilty and that communists are conspirators, and then they're told these are guilty communists, go get them, they in the same manner say, okay, we can go out and frame these people, or not frame them, we can go out and commit all these illegal acts, it's justified.
I want to add something to that, because I think there's another element that not only does the FBI not want our case to come to light, but they don't like the law itself. They don't want anything. They don't like the principle of the FBI files that were created as secret internal documents. You know, the Justice Department couldn't even see those files. They were J. Edgar Hoover and his associates' private domain, and they used those files to smear people if they wanted to by showing a couple of files to a friendly journalist and things like that. But basically, they were in-house, and they do not like the Freedom of Information Act. In fact, a judge in a case against the FBI for some files on the Alger Hiss case and my parents' case as well. His name is Judge William Jones, the same Washington district as our lawsuit is in. Our lawsuit is before Judge June Green. Judge Jones, at one point, was so angry with an FBI affidavit that was totally outrageous that he said, you know, I was going to strike this affidavit. I was going to throw it out. But I think I'm going to leave it in the record because I want it to be shown that the FBI just doesn't like the Freedom of Information Act. And this is evidence of its basic refusal to comply with the law. And that's where we're at still. The FBI wants to, even if they had nothing to hide in our parents' case, they wouldn't want to accept the principle that we're entitled to that material.
So,
How much information have you received as compared to how much exists in the files?
Well, first of all, we're really not 100% sure how much does exist. What we've received, we know, is a tiny percentage of it. We've got about 33,000 pages from the FBI, maybe another 10,000 pages from other agencies. Then, recently, 2 years after the initial release, we began to receive more pages from the FBI. At this stage, we've gotten another 20,000 pages. That is out of a possible 800,000 pages in the FBI headquarters in Washington. At least 1 million pages in the New York local field office alone. And the New York field office is very important because that's material that was collected at the place where the center of the investigation was, New York City. So, 1,800,000 pages is a good guess of how much exists. And we've gotten about 60,000.
You think the problems of getting the information was because of a conspiracy within the case itself?
Well, there's two kinds of conspiracies. There's the original conspiracy, which, as Rob described earlier, could conceivably have occurred on a very small scale. You know, 2 or 3 people get together and develop a piece of testimony that's fraudulent, then some other superior agent in the FBI or some attorney, U.S. attorney who's going to be prosecuting the case, interviews the witness and believes them, you know. So there's that kind of conspiracy, developing fraudulent evidence. And there's a whole host of literature on it that, you know, since we're talking mostly about the Freedom of Information Act case, we really can't go into here. Then there's the other kind of conspiracy, the conspiracy to protect the principle of government secrecy. In other words, the Freedom of Information Act, in my opinion, is a great law. And I think the leadership of our government, Carter's Justice Department, the FBI, etc., are really not interested in being open and being accountable to the people. I mean, they talk a lot about it, they talk a good game, but when push comes to shove, they would really like to be able to do things on their own without people looking over their shoulder. And with the Freedom of Information Act, there's a collective nation looking over the shoulder of any government official.
We asked Rob if he thought they would win their battle with the FBI and get the files that they want. He replied that some of the files have been destroyed and some were in field offices that had been locked off. Therefore, he said, they would probably never see all the files. but hopefully see enough to prove their parents' innocence.
What do you feel you will have accomplished, after this?
Well, that's the point that Rob mentioned before. If we succeed in drawing the correct lessons, and I say we, I don't mean Robbie and me, I mean we as a people in this country, if we draw the correct lessons from this experience, not even the lesson that it was a frame-up and it was a horrible thing, but a much more detailed lesson that these kinds of politically motivated prosecutions had an impact on our nation, a very serious impact, an impact in terms of turning off a whole generation of people to critical thinking. I mean, you right now in our much freer atmosphere today probably feel that you can safely explore just about any issue in high school, or having a controversial interview like this on a high school television station is, unheard of 20 years ago. The impact of a case like this, convincing the average American citizen that, communists were traitors who stole the secret of the atom bomb and placed the survival of our nation in danger, this had a very chilling effect on the whole principle of freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of political views, because the average citizen said, well, how are we going to know when the next spies come along? Well, the only way to know is if they're commies, or if they're like commies, or if they sound like commies, or if they know anybody who's like a commie, or if they read something that commies read.
Rob then added an important comment, summing up exactly what their goal is.
You may not agree with our politics. You may not like what we stand for. You may not believe that my parents were framed. But you have a right to know the facts. And the vast bulk of the facts are in the government's files, and the American public should have a right to see them. And I feel the same way. I don't know what's in those files. It could be that something's going to come out in those files that will make me look bad, make my parents look bad. I don't think that's the case. But even if it is, the truth and getting it all out is the most important thing. And that's what we're asking the American public to join us in. Not in agreeing with everything we say, but in just trying to get the truth before the public.